Okay. So after I finished the Great Ocean Walk recently, I had a few people ask me about the differences between the Cape to Cape in WA and the Great Ocean Walk. Seeing I've walked the Cape to Cape in WA now 3 times, 2 point something times anyway. And I've just walked a Great Ocean Walk within a month of walking the Cape to Cape. I thought I'd just knock out a quick video comparing the two. So the Cape to Cape's around 120 k's, and the Great Ocean Walk is around 100 kilometres in length. So they're decent length walks. My last trip on the Cape to Cape, my most recent one a month or so ago, I did it in 7 days, and on the Great Ocean Walk last week I did it in 6 days. The Cape to Cape has around 2,650 metres climbing, and the Great Ocean Walk has about 2,700 metres climbing in the shorter distance. Those elevation figures are out of all trails, so yeah, maybe treat them with a little bit of suspicion, but they're probably pretty close. There's definitely more climbing on the Great Ocean Walk than the Cape to Cape. As far as difficulty of the two walks, there isn't a lot in it. The Cape to Cape doesn't have the climbing of the Great Ocean Walk, but it's got a lot of soft sand, and not as much protection from the elements. So if it's hot, you're going to get baked. But the soft sand is what does it. The Great Ocean Walk has more climbing and potentially more mud. It wasn't muddy when I went through, but I could see how it would be muddy. Both tracks are very well signposted and marked, so there's not much difference there. The Great Ocean Walk has a better treadway, so it's a better formed track than the Cape to Cape. But the Cape to Cape's fine, it's not bad, but the Great Ocean Walk is just a little bit better as far as tracks go. The big difference, I suppose, well, apart from the scenery, is pretty big, but the other big difference on the two walks is the camping. So the camping spots on the Great Ocean Walk are far superior to the Cape to Cape Walk in most respects. On the Great Ocean Walk, there's composting toilets that you put sawdust in after you do your business, and whereas on the Cape to Cape, they're just the old style long drops. On the Great Ocean Walk, there's 3-sided shelters with a picnic table inside, and one of the shelters has even got USB chargers and lights. On the Cape to Cape, you get a couple of picnic tables scattered around the campsites, and that's about it. The Great Ocean Walk had 4 tanks, pretty much 4 tanks at every campsite. The Cape to Cape has generally got 1 tank attached to the toilet. The Great Ocean Walk has got like camp furniture at your little camp nodes, so you've got like a pack table you can rest your gear on while you put your tent up. There's none of that really on the Cape to Cape. But having said all that, you pay for the Great Ocean Walk camps. It's just over $18 a night, whereas everything on the Cape to Cape's free. You need to pay and book on the Great Ocean Walk though. The other thing to notice with camps, to note with camps, is the Great Ocean Walk camps are more evenly spaced out for walkers. Some of the camps, so when the walkers camps on the Cape to Cape, there's a couple of big days and then there's a short day. They're not as evenly spaced. I mean, they're fine, but it's just a little bit more intuitive and makes the days a little bit easier to plan on the Great Ocean Walk, I think. So the Cape to Cape for me, I've done it, like I said, 3 times. The highlights for me are the other beaches over in WA. They do beaches pretty good in Western Australia. The white sand, occasionally you'll get the red rock and the turquoise water of the beaches. amazing. The beach towns you go through, you go through Margaret River. So you've got all the surfing culture of Margaret River and Gracetown. It's just, it feels like I'm walking through my youth sometimes. On the other hand, the Great Ocean Walk is more natural. It's a lot more. There's no towns that you go through. You've got the highlights for me are probably just the rugged green kind of mountain scenery, lush mountains meeting the surging water of Bass Strait. You've got these huge rugged hills dropping straight into the ocean. The shipwreck history on the Great Ocean Walk is also pretty amazing. And the other thing is just the campsites on the Great Ocean Walk, particularly Ryan's Den and Devil's Kitchen and Joanna. They're amazing camps. The positions of them, we're very lucky to have them. They're the Reader's Digest highlights of the two walks. It depends what you like, If you like beaches, you go for the Cape to Cape. If you like the rugged mountain and a bit more wilderness, you'd probably go for the Great Ocean Walk. The logistics of walking are possibly a little bit easier on the Great Ocean Walk. Logistics of walking, though, are a fair bit easier on the Cape to Cape than the Great Ocean Walk. The Cape to Cape passes through three decent sized towns. You've got Prevelly, Gracetown and Yallingup, and it has a couple of other spots where you can buy feed or a drink or a pie or whatever in Hamlin Bay and Smiths Beach. The Great Ocean Walk, in contrast, you're pretty much on your own. There's no towns. You break out at a point at the Cape Otway Lighthouse, and there's little snacks at the lighthouse kind of entrance station. There is a cafe in the lighthouse precinct, which you'll have to pay $10 to get into the precinct, and the cafe wasn't open when I went through anyway. There's also the beginning and the end of the Cape to Cape. There's a cafe at Cape Naturalist and Cape Lewin, little cafes. Cape Lewin's got a big cafe, a nice cafe actually. Whereas on the Great Ocean Walk, at the end of the walk, at the start of the walk, Apollo Bay has got everything you need. But at the end of the walk at the Port Campbell Visitor Centre, there's not much. You can buy a drink or a chocolate bar, and that's about it. Keep that in mind. The logistics for the transport on the two walks are fairly similar. The Cape to Cape's got a Trans WA bus that runs up and down the coast between the two trailheads, more or less. And in Victoria, there's a V-Line bus that does the same thing. Now, most of these, I think these services are like once a day, so they're not very common. There's also shuttle services around, so that's another option if you want to book a private shuttle, which could work better. Okay, both walks are fairly well mapped, and it's while the trails are marked and signposted well. There are guidebooks specifically for both walks. So the friends of the Cape to Cape track have a guidebook. That's the one I've got. It's maybe an old edition now. And this is the one for the Great Ocean Walk, which I used. It's a few years old. At the very least, the guidebooks are handy for organising your trip and working out how far you have to walk each day and where you can buy food and things like that. So I highly recommend the guidebooks. They're both very good books. So when it comes down to it, it's really what your preference is. If you prefer the more wilderness type of walk, then the Great Ocean Walk is probably the go. The Cape to Cape kind of touches civilization a lot more. I prefer the wilderness type walk, so I'd probably go for the Great Ocean Walk. However, if it was in summer or a warm weather and I could swim, I'd probably err on the side of the Cape to Cape. It's a very close run thing. Obviously, if you're in WA, it's probably not a hard choice. You're going to go for the Cape to Cape. And if you're in Victoria, you're probably not going to duck over to Western Australia to walk the Cape to Cape. But if for some reason you're thinking of choosing between the two. Say you live in Queensland or somewhere. I hope the video helps. Yeah, it's up to you. They're both stunning walks. For me personally, probably the Great Ocean Walk, but there's bugger all in it. All right, I'll catch you on the next one.